Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89, for Steve White's 89. Well, catching up on Star Trek news. I've sort of been focused on other things the last week or so, and there are a few things that came out, and I'm like, I'll get to it later. Um, the first thing that happened was there was a rumor that Kirk was going to be buying the new series, that they were going to have Kirk in Strange New Worlds was a rumor first, and then there was talk he was going to be by, and this made a lot of the gay papers, and Shatner eventually had to um, chime in and give an opinion, which wasn't very positive. He basically said, "Yep, off, go do your PC thing, whatever." I didn't see the tweet, but I don't care what Shatner says, so whatever. Um, but apparently, there's an insider called Daniel Richman, and he basically put a tweet. I don't know if it was Twitter or Instagram, where he basically says he hears they're toying with the idea of making Kirk bi in Strange New Things, and that's it. That's all it's based on. So it seems like a bit of a storm in a teacup. Now there seems to be no actual proof that they're even going to have Kirk in the series. There was talk of them looking to cast him. So I never saw anything more about that. There didn't seem to be anything coming from that, any proof, any further developments or anything. It just seemed to be a rumor. And then the rumor was that the character was going to be bisexual. So some people were threatened by that because he was such a sort of masculine sort of character, and he's very much this sort of ideal of male straightness, because he ran around the galaxy effing everything. But a lot of people then pointed to that point. Well, he had sex with a lot of aliens who may have appeared female, but doesn't mean they were, and that if he's okay with sex with aliens, why would he be that bothered by sex with males? So it's not that unfathomable to think that he could be bisexual. So, and the Gay Times were sort of suggesting that maybe if they do make him bisexual but sexualize him to a high extent, like his original character was sexualized, they may actually alienate a lot of the bisexual audience because they feel they are over sexualized. So it's interesting how much people have invested in it and thought about it, because I just pretty much think it's a rumor. I don't really take it that seriously at all, and I didn't really bother to do anything about it and whatever. But since I'm doing a video on some other things that are happening with Star Trek, I thought I may as well talk about it. So the next thing that I sort of wanted to talk about was there was talk that Prodigy was cancelled. Now, I wouldn't really care because it's new Star Trek, and new Star Trek isn't really Star Trek. And I haven't really gotten any pleasure out of any of it outside of a few scenes with new Spock and Pike. And number one, Una was good. But the talk was that it was cancelled because the trademark wasn't renewed, but that seems to be just because they made a new one. So the original ones seem to be a little older and based more around DVD and TV rights or something, whereas this new one is based more on streaming because Nickelodeon apparently is going to be in CBS, and CBS is now going to have a new streaming service that CBS All Access is going to be rebranded, and it's going to be adding all the content from Paramount, which they got after they merged again. So it just seems to be a shuffling of the trademarks. So I guess they're more specifically focusing on the current sort of focus of the show or the distribution of the show. So sadly, I wouldn't be too bothered if it was cancelled, because I wouldn't mind all the current shows being cancelled and them coming back with new people and starting and creating a bunch of new shows without the current problems with the show, with the series, with the brand. So I wouldn't be that bothered, but apparently it is still happening. But we still don't know anything about it, so who knows? It still could, a million things could happen while it's still in development. Now the other thing was I heard that Lower Decks. Lower Decks was going to get the same sort of distribution that Picard and that got, with some of the Canadian and UK TV stations, and Amazon and stuff. So that there was talks that they basically were selling Lower Decks to everyone that they sold Picard to, and Discovery, but I haven't seen anything more about that, so that may be rumour, so I don't know. But that wasn't sort of surprising either. It makes sense that the same people would buy that series, that then when they entered into a contract, they probably were obliged to take on the other series, or they wanted to take on Star Trek as a brand as a whole. So any new shows they would probably show as well, or screen as well. So there's that. And the last thing, which is the most the biggest story, I don't know if it's the biggest story actually, and I just realised I didn't send the quotes through to my laptop, so I can't read them. Basically, they did an article with oh no, I wrote down the name, Mike McMahon, the guy who's basically doing Lower Decks. They did an interview with him, Entertainment Weekly, and they had 2 new images from Lower Decks, which were kind of interesting. I mean, one shows the cast, the main Lower Decks cast, and the actual higher up officers who are not the main cast, interacting together in an action scene. There's next-gen star phases, and they're covered in a lot of black stuff. Some people are speculating, of course, because it's black, they must be taking on the tar monster that killed Tasha Yar, but I mean, it could be anything. Says that, and the other image is just the crew chilling out in their quarters, and they're all having a drink, and there's not a lot to look at. A few little variations of the uniform. One officer has her sleeves rolled up, another one has different coloured boots, or they could be socks or something that took the boots up. I don't know. It's nothing remarkable. They're drinking, but one of them has already drank his drink. So people are even reading into it so much, I think maybe that character has a drinking problem or something. So, my God. We're a bit desperate for Star Trek news, I think, at the moment. Now, some of the quotes were kind of interesting. One was kind of positive. He was saying, this show will treat the sci-fi elements of the show as seriously as all the other Star Trek shows have treated their content, their subject. So that's promising. It's not going to be a parody or a comedy to the point where it makes fun of everything. The stories will actually be serious, and the humour will be probably more through the characters, and a bit more sophisticated rather than slapstick, kiddie sort of shows. It looks like it's going to be a more adult cartoon show than I was originally expecting, so that's good. But the other thing that worried me was saying that yes, we will be looking at the show, taking the stories seriously, and the subjects and what happens in the show just as serious as any other Star Trek show. We'll just be looking at it from a different angle. And then he expanded on that, saying how, of course, because we're dealing with the Lower Decks crew, they're going to be looking at the bridge crew, the more important crew members, but not more important characters on the show, differently, from a different angle. And I sort of thought, I can see them deconstructing these characters and sort of demeaning the characters and the roles, and making fun of them, and by default making fun of all the other Star Trek crews, and how seriously they take themselves, how important they are, things like that. And one of the things that new Star Trek has a problem with is really having faith in, or creating and having faith in very evolved characters, very sort of superhero level characters who are so evolved and sophisticated that they appear a bit unrealistic and superhero-esque. But that was sort of the point and the appeal. They were role models. They were people that we would evolve into and wanted to aspire to, as opposed to people on our level who have all the same flaws and problems that we do, because what's the point of that? We see that on every other TV show. So I think they're probably going to be sort of focusing that way with the show, where we're just going to see these characters sort of how in Picard, they sort of had a lower class of people who worked on the ships and the shipyards and stuff, and the idea that these people will be treated, these people will be treated as less than, or not have the same sort of respect or something, sort of being the underdog and the idea to try and appeal to like the basic general sort of audience member who is not probably working in a high position, not getting a good pay, resenting the people above him, and sort of feeding into that sort of attitude. I really don't think that's going to work for Star Trek and as a Star Trek show. So if they go that way with the characters and the storylines, it's going to be very cynical and just not really Star Trek. So I'm not feeling very optimistic about that element of the show. But they could handle that totally differently. So there's different ways that could go and be treated. So, but that's all the Star Trek stuff that's happened that I wanted to talk about that was interesting to me. So I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comment section if you have any information or anything. A lot of people seem to have opinion about Kirk being bi. I wasn't bothered by it, probably because I'm gay. But like I said, he sort of would sleep with anything. So why would people be bothered by him sleeping with a different sex of humans when they're okay with him sleeping with aliens? That never made any sense when people suggested he could or would be gay years ago, the character. So I'm not that bothered with the idea of them exploring that in the show, so long as it doesn't then define him, because obviously it didn't define him in the later shows. So it may well have been something he was doing and why would anyone care? So why would anyone talk about it? So I'm not bothered. But I'm going to go. Thanks. Bye.